PS5 video, so we now have the first piece of Homebrew that can be loaded using the JIT exploits with the Lua Core Star Wars Racer Revenge game up to the latest firmwares. This does not need a jailbreak to do this, so you can run this up to firmware 13.00 on the PS5, and this first example comes to us from EGYCNQ Mohammed Adel, and this is, of course, the NES emulator that has been teased for a while. We now have it release, and I'll show you guys here how you can get this set up on the latest firmwares on the PS5. So he says here is a proof of concept that full homebrew apps can be built and run on the PS5 userland with no kernel exploit needed. Works on all PS5 firmwares up to 13.00, the latest firmware. So what you'll need for this is to download the Emu Core project, so download the zip file, and get that extracted over to your computer. You also need the Lua Core exploit set up on a console. I've already done a full guide showing how to set this up. We're now on version 2.2c, so you can download the zip file for this, and I'll leave a video linked in the description to my full setup guide on how to get this exploit set up on your PS5 up to the latest firmware. You also need the game Star Wars Racer Revenge, but if you're on the latest firmware, you can just purchase a copy from the PlayStation Store itself, which is much cheaper than trying to get the physical copy. So extract the Emu Core zip file into a folder. I've just created a folder with the same name and extracted all of the files from the project into that folder. So we've got it right here. So you'll notice that the ROMs folder is empty. Obviously, the developer cannot provide any NAS ROMs for you to run. You'll have to source your own ROMs yourself. Obviously, backups from your own NAS games that you've purchased. So I already have a bunch of ROM backups for NES right here. I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of them. I've copied them into the ROMs folder here for the emulator. So just copy them all in there and get rid of that folder. So we now have our ROMs stored inside the ROMs folder here. So on the PS5, we need to make sure we're connected to our network. So if you go to System Software, Console Information, you want to check to see if you have a valid IPv4 address. So make sure that your console is connected to your local network, so it has a network connection. Obviously, you can set up a network connection in your network settings there, but if you don't already have it connected. But once you have a network connection, you can run the game Star Wars Racer Revenge, get into the start screen. Takes a few seconds before it lets you press start to get into the main menu, and then we can press start. From the main menu, we're going to go to options. There's a few seconds to load, and then we can go to Hall of Fame. And that will start triggering the Lua exploits, the Lua Core exploits. So just that's the complete. If you've done the setup already, check my previous guide shows you how to set up this exploit, and it's great. It's a working network connection. It should come up seeing that the Lua Core Lua loader is ring here, listening on the PS5's IP address, the port 9026. So let's just see the message. It should be good to send the emulator over to your PS5. So we're going to switch over to our computer again. We're going to open up the Emu Core folder. So in the folder that has NES_launcher, we're going to right-click in here and open in terminal. If you don't have the option to open in terminal, you can click up here in the file path and then simply add a CMD space to the beginning of the file path here and press enter, and that will open up a command prompt in the same window. So what we're looking to do now is type in the word Python and press enter. If it comes up saying Python 3.11.9 or whatever version 3 point something, then you do have Python installed, which is needed for the sender. So we can go ahead and type in exit, open and close brackets to exit once we're done to verify that we have Python installed. So if it's not installed, it will say it's not a valid internal or external command, something like that. Or it might open up the Microsoft Store here and take you to Python on the store, and you can just select it and select the option to get Python, and that will install it for you. Once you have it installed, we can then run the command, which is this NES launcher here. So what we do is we type in Python, and then NES_launcher.py, and the IP address of your PS5 that is on screen on your PS5 right now, 137.83 in my case. And then I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And when I press enter here, we should see some interesting stuff happen. I'll press enter, and view scanning runs, launching emulator, and you can see it popping up there on the PS5, just copying all of the ROM files over to the console. I'll launch the emulator, done, success, FTP server, and then there we go. We now have access some emulator that can run our NES games. And I'm using my DualSense controller, so that support's being added for the DualSense, so that's working. Let's go ahead and load Super Mario Bros., a classic. So with the control scheme here, you need to press the Start button, which is actually the Options button on the DualSense, and that will get things loaded here, as you can see. And then we can use the D-pad to move left and right. Always the X is jump. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory there as well. There's also different controller input screens through a web panel, so you can actually, go to the PS5's IP address on a web browser on your phone or computer, and then you can input commands using that. So you don't have to use the native DualSense controller on the console itself. You can also, add a controller. You can also control it from that web panel from another device. You have that option that's built in as well. But yeah, pretty awesome that we actually have NES games running here on the PS5. Can press, I believe it's L1 to go back to the menu. So the white panel is just your PS5's IP address, colon 9030, and that will take you over here to this, where you can use this virtual controller to control the game. So you can also use that as your input instead of the native controller for the PS5. Obviously, you would rather use the controller, I'm sure. So you can launch your games just by selecting it with X, and that will start launching the game. It's the options button really to actually start, get into the game itself, and then once you're in the game, you can just simply head back over to the main menu to launch another game by selecting L1, and that will take you back to the menu. So that's how this works. Now also looks like you could add the ROMs to the save data for the Lua Core exploit, so that you don't have to upload the ROMs every time you send the command. You can just have the ROMs in the save data as part of the save data, so that whenever you load the emulator, they are ready to be loaded, and they don't have to be uploaded through FTP, but it really only takes a few seconds to upload them through FTP because they're very small. Even if you have hundreds of NES games, it literally only takes a few seconds to upload them, so I don't think that's too big of a deal, but if you wanted, you could have them stored in the save data so that you wouldn't have to upload them. That is also an option, by the looks of things. But yet, now I know some people are going to be saying, what's the point of this? Who cares about running these really old games on a PS5 on the latest firmware when you could just load them on the computer that you're using to send them to the PS5 with? That is true, but of course, this is a proof of concept to show what's possible. The fact that you can run homebrew applications on the PS5 without kernel exploits, without a jailbreak, which could open the door to a lot more interesting homebrew stuff that could be created and loaded on the latest firmwares for the PS5 without a jailbreak. That really is the point, is that this is a proof of concept to show what is technically possible on the PS5 without a jailbreak now using this exploit. So anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed this video or found the information useful. If you did, please even like and subscribe, and as always,